Hey guys, sorry I haven't been doing any wrap ups lately. I'm still kind of trying to figure out what interesting things I could do with my channel because, I think I've said this in other videos, that I'm someone who there are limits to what I can do. Some of them are limits that I can probably control, like my own still feeling awkward on this channel, and not being comfortable with stepping out of the box a little bit. And then there are some limitations that at the moment I can't control them. I can't fix them. Like my parents don't know much about, I mean, they know about technology. I mean, they're not computer savvy, and neither am I. I only know a little bit more than they do. So it's hard to figure out how to do certain things, like editing videos in the ways that people can make videos that are a little more like skits and creative. So I'm kind of trying to figure out different ways to make my channel more interesting. And I've stopped doing wrap ups. I don't know if I'll because, well, one, lately I've gone back into using the library, and sometimes I don't have my library books by the end of the month with me anymore. And also, I'm trying to find ways to do something different instead of just doing the wrap ups, the book hauls, the tags. Like, if you watched, I did film a video where I was reading some of the stories from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark collection, and I was apprehensive about that video. I don't even know if people will actually view it, especially because the way I filmed it, maybe they won't like that, but I was trying to also give it a bit of an atmosphere with the video. And I did stumble a little bit when I started reading the first story. So hopefully I got some views on that, and people liked it. But anyway, I'm going to just do, a current reading video. And I'm also going to kind of do a wrap up where I talk about the books that I've recently finished. So one of the library books I have been trying to read some Neil Gaiman. Like, I had got the book American Gods a long time ago, like right around the time before we moved to where we currently live. And I hadn't gotten around to it. I didn't when I bought it, because this is what I do when I buy a book. A lot of times I buy a book and then I want to read it right away, but then there's so many other books that I've neglected, and by the time I get home, I will feel like, actually, coincidentally, I'm feeling that anxiety, a little bit of that anxiety and that nagging feeling of books I've neglected, and then also anxiety about the class I'm taking right now and the assignments I have to do, but that's a whole other story. So I started reading a little bit of American Gods when I first bought it, but then I stopped, and it has taken me quite a while to get back into reading it, and I did start over. And I'm currently reading it now, which, let me go ahead and take that one off the shelf if I can grab it next to me. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay, good. Oh, you can't grab it. Let me go ahead and show you guys this book as well. Oh, I'll do that later. Never mind. So, it's funny, now I was feeling chilly earlier, and now I'm like warm. So I started getting Neil Gaiman books from the library. I read back in September, I believe I read The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which I thought was cute. It was good. I liked it. I definitely like it better than the current Neil Gaiman book I just finished. But that was a very interesting book. It was a little confusing because it was very magical realism focused, about a boy this young man returns to where he grew up, where he spent somewhere he spent his childhood, and he looks back on it and how he he finds out his father is having an affair with a woman who his mother, not realizing that she was having an affair with her husband, hired to babysit him and his sister. And in the way he copes with it and deals with it is he imagines her as a monster that had crawled out via his foot. And it's about how this little girl he had made Letty Hempstock was her name. How he made friends with this girl, and her mother and her grandmother, I think, were witches or something, and they helped him defeat the monster. And it's a very interesting story. I liked it, and it's definitely one that it's definitely one that I would probably I think you could read to your I don't know, maybe you couldn't read it to your kids, because there is a scene where he witnesses his dad in this woman making out and doing the dirty. But of course he's a little kid, so he doesn't understand what's going on. So I guess, it's funny though, it's in the children's section of our library. And I'm just thinking, that book does not need to be in the kids section. It is an adult book. Yes, the story is from a kid's perspective, but it's a very adult book. But, or at least put in the young adult section, if anything. But I guess the people at the library don't realize. Maybe they never read the book. I don't know. But the other book I read back in October, in the beginning of October, probably is more of a kid's book by Neil Gaiman than The Ocean at the End of the Lane. Which that one was the Graveyard Book, about a little boy after his parents are killed by this mysterious man named Jack. He escapes as a baby, he somehow is able to escape into the family graveyard, and ends up being raised by the ghost in the graveyard, and they teach him all about, give him all about life and teach him academics and how to be a ghost. And of course, he's kind of caught between the living and the dead, where he's not one of them. He's not dead, but he feels he's been raised by them, so they feel like family to him. But at the same time, he wants to escape and be out in the real world. He goes on these adventures where he meets a girl with actually the same last name as the girl in Ocean at the End of the Lane. So I remember when I was reading, I was thinking, oh my god, are they related? Is Neil Gaiman linking the books together? But then it's no, maybe that's just a common last name in England. And then he goes into this underground city where I can't remember if they're hobgoblins, where he almost gets turned into one of them. He befriends a witch, and it's just a cute little adventure story. And my only problem with it is that the chapters were super long. I know it's a kid's book, so because kids' attention spans don't last that long as adults attention spans do. So I know that authors make the book shorter, but with less chapters means longer chapters. And I'm not a big fan of that. Especially if it's not a story I'm in love with or anything. If it's a story that I absolutely love, then yeah, I'm okay with that. But although I still prefer shorter chapters. But I'm, like I said, I'm more tolerant if it's a book that I'm absolutely in love with. And as much as I enjoyed the Graveyard Book, I wasn't, in love with the book. So I kept, saying, okay, when is this chapter over? But anyway, so the most recent Neil Gaiman book I have read and finished is Trigger Warnings, which is a collection of supernatural and horror stories. 25 to be precise. This was a very interesting book. It's not my favorite of his books, but some of these stories I did like The Nothing O'Clock. As a fan of Doctor Who, I enjoyed that one. I read The Black Dog, which is a story from the American Gods universe that comes that comes 3 years after the events of that book. So I get a tiny bit of a spoiled a little bit because I have not read American Gods yet. Although I think I kind of already knew about the thing that got spoiled for me in that one. Or maybe not. Maybe I just assumed I already knew. I liked the tale Orange, where a girl puts on this this tanning cream, and she gets possessed by a goddess. And that is told through interviews with her brother. And I liked. Let's see what else. I like The Sleeper and the Spindle, and The Return of the Thin White Duke, which are kind of like fairy tales. Which I felt I really like the whole idea of stories that are told like fairy tales. I think that's really cool. The thing about Cassandra was kind of interesting. Interesting story. I like the twist at the end of that one. The Truth is a cave in the Black Mountains. That was kind of interesting. I was a little confused by Calendar Tales. And the problem with a lot of these stories is, and maybe that's just the nature of short stories, but so oftentimes I felt like I was just jumping into the middle of a story. And it just felt weird. It felt like I was missing something. And I don't know, maybe I don't get along with short stories, because so far my experience with short stories has not been that great. Although I guess Stephen King's books aren't really, his collection of stories aren't actually short stories. They're little novels. But I don't know. Because, I mean, I've read at least one of his, for instance, and I like that one. Let's see, The Case of Death and Honey, that is supposed to be a Sherlock Holmes retelling. Granted, I haven't really read much of Sherlock Holmes, his stories. I've read some of them, but the most I'm familiar with Sherlock Holmes is through the screen, like in movies and stuff. I've attempted reading them quite a few times, and it's not that I'm not interested, and I do want to read them. It's just, it is easier to watch on the screen than open a book and read. And I'm talking about older books, of course, because, books, like modern books of today, are a little bit easier to read first before you watch the movie. Unless you're just not interested in the genre, but you're kind of interested in the movie, like I am with YA Contemporary. I'm not interested in reading a book that's a YA Contemporary, but I have been tempted to watch the movies and the TV shows that are based on YA Contemporary novels. But anyway, The Case of Death and Honey, like I said, is Sherlock's story told through the perspective of Sherlock and not Watson. And I was kind of disappointed with it, because it's like nothing happened. All it was about is Sherlock doesn't have a case, so he's bored, and he's reminiscing how he experienced beekeeping for a period of time. So that's all he does. There's no action. There's no bad guy. He's not trying to solve any crime or anything. He's just learning how to be a beekeeper. So it was kind of boring. At least those ones that are about everyday life, contemporary novels, are a little more, add a little of drama and stuff like that. But this one, nothing happened. I mean, maybe that's how Neil Gaiman sees Sherlock, is that if he was writing a story, his stories wouldn't be as exciting as Watson's are. Let's see what else. The introduction poem was kind of interesting, comparing the writing to making a chair. I like Jerusalem. I thought that was kind of interesting, the idea of how someone who can become so obsessed with religion and that they essentially go crazy. I thought that was a very interesting concept, because there are a lot of people in a lot of religions that are so obsessed with it and push it on people. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people don't like religion and are what is it called when you don't believe in, I think it was I think it's an A word when you're not religious or you don't believe in any of the religions. You're like you don't believe in God. It's I think because religion is so like pushy and forceful and controlling that a lot of people don't really like religion. And it's very interesting. In this short story, he writes, a woman goes crazy. Okay, and then next is I liked Click Clack the Rattle Bag, which is basically this guy is babysitting his girlfriend's little brother. And he's going to tell him a scary story, but the little brother decides, I'm going to tell you a scary story instead. About these creatures called the Click Clack Rattle Bags. It was very creepy and very fun too. I don't. Let's see. And I do believe The Sleeper and the Spindle has its own book actually. That it all of a sudden like just came out not that long ago, became really popular. And I think I've seen that one at the library. So that's the latest Neil Gaiman. I thought it was okay. And as someone pointed out on Goodreads, the stories are very random. The stories and the poems are random, and there's no cohesive pattern to them, except for like the title trigger warnings kind of links them together. And I didn't read the little introduction to the stories, but like it's how I think the trigger warning refers to the fact that all these stories are either really creepy or, a bit strange. And like everybody has their limits and everybody has their triggers. Oh, and I did break my rule and got a book that I knew was probably way too long and I would not finish it in 2 weeks. And that was Revival by Stephen King. And I still have it over there, but I'm too lazy to get up and get it while I'm filming because that's just going to waste time. Which is about this boy who he forms this close bond with the new minister in his town. But then the minister, after his young wife and son are murdered, he stops believing in God. And it's how this whole situation impacts this young boy as he grows up and becomes a man. And the minister is also kind of obsessed with lightning and how that works and the power of electricity. And it's I enjoyed it. I really liked it, but it was too long. And I didn't want to keep checking out because, like I said, it gives me anxiety when I know that, yes, the library will probably let me keep it for another 2 weeks so I can renew it and everything. But at the same time, it's this nagging in my head that I need to get this book finished so I can return it. So I won't have too many books to bring home from the library. Although I might end up doing that anyway. It bothers me, so I decided to DNF it, but it is on my wish list, on my Amazon wish list. Because I did like it, and I did enjoy it, and I'm interested to see what happens and how things work out, if maybe the minister, the guy, starts believing in God again, or maybe he doesn't believe in God, or if our protagonist has this epiphany about God, or maybe he doesn't. I want to know, because it's a very interesting topic, the idea of God and believing in God, and do you blame, if people that you love die too soon, and, do you blame God for that? Do you lose your faith in God? Or do you, accept it as an act of God? Or maybe just shit just happens. And you can't explain it. I'm someone who, as of right now, if something happened to if I got married and my husband died too soon, as of right now, or if my parents died before I was ready for them, as of right now, I know I wouldn't blame God and I wouldn't lose faith in God. But I don't know. But then again, who knows how I would react emotionally? And that's what Revival is about. Our part of what it's about. I mean, like I said, I DNF'd the book, so I haven't finished it, but that's the impression I've got of the first few chapters that I've read, the first 5 chapters that I read. And again, this is another book where there aren't as many chapters, but they're really long chapters. I think I'm also going to DNF A Face Like Glass. That one I didn't get very far in, but I'm just not as interested in that one. I mean, it's an interesting story, and maybe if I took the time and sat down but I'm kind of also trying to read, where is it? I'm also reading, Children of Blood and Bone, and then, which is a really good, unless I'm finally jumping on this bandwagon here, about, this king has taken away the magic of these people years and years ago, and all of a sudden there's this mysterious scroll that allows them to receive the people's power once again. And our main character, Zelly, with the help of the king's daughter, the princess, and her brother, they are going on this journey in search of the scroll, the sunstone, and there's one other thing to restore magic back to their people. And they have, like, what shows is that they have magic is, like, their shock of white hair, for instance, is what identifies them as the Magi. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. And I'm really liking it so far. I think it's so much fun, and I definitely am more interested in that one than A Face Like Glass. And Sally as the main character is a very, very unique main character. She's fun. I love all the characters. And I know that people say that the romance was unnecessary in this book, and I haven't, but I personally am cool with the romance in these kind of books. Because I like it. And as I told a friend, I was venting to a friend last night, that I'm so conflicted on that thing. Like, I don't want romance to dominate my books, but I'm one of those people who doesn't have a problem when it's in a YA book. I mean, but at the same time, I kind of understand why people complain about having romance in every YA book. So my emotion, my feelings on the whole romance in books is very, all over the place. Like, I like it, but then at the same time, I understand why other people don't like it. But then when I hear that people are complaining about that, sometimes I get a little defensive. Not that I ever say anything to her directly, but in my head, I'm like saying, there's nothing wrong with, romance in books, and why are you hating on romance in a book? But everybody's, of course, has their opinions. And like I said, the point is, I'm so far really enjoying this book. I think it's really cool, and I'm more than halfway done. And like I said, I want to get this book done, but I think tomorrow I'm going to go to the bookstore and go ahead and renew these books and return Revival and Trigger Warning and possibly A Face Like Glass. And the other library book I am also reading is The Clay Girl by Heather Tucker. This is very interesting. I can't figure out I'm still trying to understand what's going on in this book. I haven't gotten very far. So far, it's about this girl named Ari, or Harriet, with only one R, apparently. And she has been has this really close bond with her 2 aunts, much to her mother's dismay and disgust, and something like that. It's hard for me to really sum up what's going on in the book, because I haven't gotten very far, and for me, I have to get pretty far in a book to, be able to give you guys a summary. I mean, some books are pretty easy, a lot of young adult books are pretty easy to explain. And there's something about how she looks like more like her father than her mother, and I think that bothers her mother, because her father is not that great of a guy. But I do like it. It's just hard for me. I'm still just trying to figure this book out and what's going on with this book. And I'm also reading 2 other Neil Gaiman books. This one, there's a show next year coming. I don't know when it is, so I decided to go ahead and start this one. I bought this one at the bookstore at Books A Million the other day. Because, like I said, I heard that the show was coming. And I did put it on my Amazon wish list, but I asked my mom if she could drop me off at Books A Million. So I went ahead and looked for it at Books A Million and bought it. This is a mass market paperback because I actually like mass market paperbacks. They're so much easier to take with you places. And I feel like, surprisingly, sometimes the small print is a little easier for me to read than the big ones because I can't take the bigger books with me places. It's just too much trouble. And then, also, when I go to work, it's easier to pack a book this size in my little lunch pouch than just to pack a book like this size. And because I only get a 15-minute break, so I decide not to get a locker. But I'm liking it. It's basically, about a demon and an angel. And this is, of course, because of hearing about what it's about via the trailer for the show that's going to be coming next year. And they're trying to stop Armageddon. And so far, I find it very interesting, very entertaining, and I cannot wait to continue it. And then and like I said, I did start reading American Gods again. Our main character Shadow has gotten out of jail finally. His wife was murdered, and he has been hired by the mysterious Mr. Wednesday. Because something's going on. I'm not sure if he's explained him what's going on yet, but I do know there's some mysterious man who has approached Shadow and is like, don't work with Mr. Wednesday. You don't want to mess with him. And Mr. Wednesday there seems to be a lot of people who don't like Mr. Wednesday and working with him. He's one of those characters that apparently attracts trouble, I guess. And, there's this one part in the beginning of the book that's still confusing me. Okay, so there's a goddess that has this guy in her hotel room, and they're having a one-night stand, and when they're having sex, she's all like, worship me, say it out loud, and as he's saying it, something happens to the guy. Like, he's inside of her or something. Like, she traps him inside of her. I don't know. I'm confused. I had to read that more than once. And I still don't know what exactly happened to the guy. Like, did she trap him inside her body or something? Or, I don't know. I'm so confused. It was a very weird scene. I didn't get what was going on. So those are some of the fiction books I'm currently reading. I have stopped reading Malice and Theft of Swords for a little while, but I do need to get back to those soon. But I also decided to participate in Nonfiction November. That is hosted by Olive from A Book Olive. She's a really good booktuber. I definitely think you should check her out if you haven't already. She does read a lot of nonfiction and a lot of literary works. My TV cut off because I had on pause for too long. So I decided to read Marie Antoinette, A Journey by Antonia Fraser, which is, as you can tell by the title, about Marie Antoinette from when she was a child to her marrying of the King Louis I don't know which one it was. Maybe the 15th. And how she ended up, the people, from what I know about her history, the people kind of turned against her, thought she wasn't a very good queen, and she is known for saying the very infamous "let them eat cake" line. And of course, I'm sure you can guess that this eventually goes up to her death. I've kind of really been interested in French history lately. Unfortunately, I did not study French for a foreign language in school, and I imagine my mom would tell me it wouldn't be a good idea because it would require a lot of effort in studying. But I've always been kind of intrigued by French history. And like, I remember back in 2007, I spent a week in France because my sister is the one who studied French, and she was studying in college. One semester she was studying abroad there, so we got to go visit her back in 2007, and I've just always been interested in France. And apparently there are a lot of movies I watch that take place in France, like Beauty and the Beast, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Passport to Paris with the Olsen twins. What else? I know there are several others that I've watched that take place in France. Phantom of the Opera. I'm looking at my movies. I'm trying to think. I know there are a lot more that I've read that take place in France. But like I said, I've always been interested in France. And I got this at the used bookstore. And I've only gotten to chapter 4 where we are learning about Marie Antoinette's childhood and how she grew up in her relationship with her siblings and how her upbringing, like her mom was loving and everything. She had a very fun childhood, and her mom was very loving, but she was also very hard on her children because, of course, it was all about marrying up in the world for women, especially. And then I am also reading Neil Gabler's Walt Disney: A Triumph in the American Imagination. Oh, I'm reading this for the challenge pastime, in referring more to the pastime rather than pastime. Which, when she says pastime, I think it means your favorite pastime. And pastime, as in two separate words, meaning the past. But I think Olive implies that you can interpret it how you want. And she admires when people get a little creative with these challenges. So, but I am reading a book about, like I said, this is referring to past time, something about the past. And then this one is referring to, you can do the past time for this one as well, but I think this also applies to wonder. The challenge number 3 or 2, I think, where it's wonder. Wonder with an O and wonder with an A. I don't have any travel memoirs for wonder. But this one is I feel like, because this one is about Walt's imagination and how he created and how he brought to life the imagination for a lot of people, for especially children, with his series of movies and cartoons. And this is about his life and how he grew up and how he had all these jobs and how he was always, for the longest time, he wanted to be an actor for a period of time, but then he was also a brilliant cartoonist. And cartoon drawing kind of took up most of his time, and he neglected his regular academic studies to focus on his drawing. And how his father was very tough on him and his siblings. Although his sister Ruth, funnily enough, said, "Oh, Dad was not that hard on us." But I was just thinking about that, and it's like, well, no, of course he's not hard on his little princess. I mean, back then, a father went, and even today, a little bit. Fathers, I think, are more hard on their sons and on their daughters. Like, the daughters, more so back in the day, the daughters were just meant to make babies and take care of the house and eventually be a good mother and be a support system for her husband, no matter what. So it makes sense then. And while the sons were meant to be the providers, the ones who did the hard labor, and the ones who protected their families. So it makes sense that their father was a lot harder on his sons than on his daughter. And I feel like, and I imagine also he kind of projects into his sons as well, wanting his sons to follow in his footsteps. And I think that's the impression I'm getting, that Walt's father, Elias Disney, wanted Walt to follow in his footsteps. Especially because I just read a part where Walt, the World War I is over, and he decides that he wants to get a job as a cartoonist, and his father would rather him work at the Jell-O factory, because he thinks that's a more practical job, and he thinks you're gonna fail. You're not gonna, being a cartoonist is not, just like any other artist, it's not gonna be easy. You're probably gonna fail, and it's not a reliable job. You won't guarantee making money being a cartoonist. But of course, Walt is stubborn, and he's not going to listen to his father, and this is what he's passionate about. And good thing he listened to his own passions, because we would not have all the great kids movies that we have today. Or we wouldn't have the Disney park. Or, And I know a lot of people have issues with the Disney company and everything. Like, they are basically taking over everything. And maybe Walt wouldn't be happy with that either, because he's a very humble man, and he doesn't want to be the top dog in the business. He just, wants to show that he cares about people and wants to entertain people. He doesn't. So maybe he wouldn't be happy with how the company is trying to take over everything and how they're so focused on making money. But as I always say, and even though there are times when I am disappointed, I've been recently watching the Defunct channel on YouTube, where they talk about a lot of theme park rides and attractions that weren't successful, and eventually, or even if they were successful, the company decides for some reason or another that they're going to get rid of this attraction or this ride. And I was watching Journey into the Imagination, which I sound like I would ride an attraction that I would have enjoyed and really loved as a kid. And they eventually got rid of it. And as disappointing as that is, it's all they're a business, and they're gonna screw up and make mistakes. Or at least we'll see as a screw up. But they're still a business. So despite how disappointing it is, but maybe Walt would not appreciate, but then again, maybe Walt wouldn't appreciate the direction his company has gone since then. And I don't think, from the introduction, I got the impression, because Neil Gabler did talk about a little bit, give kind of an introduction about what he knows about Walt and what he intends to do with this biography. Because there's people in this company never really knew Walt. They knew bits and pieces, and they got impressions of what they thought, of who they thought he was. And Noel Gabler, in his introduction, says his intention is to explain who Walt is as a person, maybe to try to figure out who this man is. But he talks about how Walt was probably not comfortable being a businessman. And so, but this is definitely, it's a very interesting read to learn about the man who created the biggest company in the children's industry, in the children's entertainment industry there is, which is Disney. And he, I wish I could have met Disney, but of course he was way before my time. But he's definitely a very interesting character, and a very fun, entertaining character too. And I'm looking forward to continuing reading more about him. And I don't know if I'll get this done by the end of the month. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I mean, this is a pretty big chunk of a book. But I do want to squeeze in one more nonfiction. And I also might dip into David McCullough's John Adams, because I do need to finish that one, because it's not, as I've said several times in other videos, it's my brother-in-law's copy. So I do need to finish that one. So I might dip into that one a little bit. At least the progress in that one. But as I also said in previous videos, my brother-in-law isn't pushing me to get it done. Because, I imagine the two of them don't really have much time to read with the kids and everything. So, but I promise I do feel guilty, and like I said, it's nagging me. And I also need to read Crazy Rich Asians, because I told my sister about it, and I feel like I want her to read that book. And plus it will allow me to get rid of get rid of books, get rid of another book by just giving it to my sister to make room for more books. So that's my current reading update, and I just realized I'm looking at the time and seeing how long this video is. So hopefully this video will upload, either that or I'm gonna have to, when I get back from work, refilm it and try and make it a little shorter. But you know me, I like to talk. So if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you hadn't already. And I will talk to you all later. I hope, as always, you are enjoying your reading. Bye!